That's the other thing people ask me. They say, oh my God, are the Republicans going to gerrymander North Carolina as badly as they did Texas or somewhere like that? And I was like, they already did. North Carolina was the petri dish for it. What you're seeing in Texas and everywhere else is a fault of ours in that sense. The thing that I think Michael Whatley should be scared about is that nobody knows who he is. And we got a lot of time to label who the hell he is, which is a big oil lobbyist and somebody from D.C. who ain't from around here, in my personal opinion, because he ain't lived here in a long time. And again, expects to run and get handed a U.S. Senate seat by being Trump's little puppet.
Welcome in another edition of Tying Together with Tim Boehm. I am Tim Boehm here with John McHugh, whose voice is not quite as normal this week.
No.
Rough weekend, John?
I had a really great time from about 8 a.m. to, I'll say 7:35.
What happened at 7:35? John's a Penn State graduate.
I am.
You were at the game.
I was at the game.
And
it didn't go super great. We can leave it there.
Okay.
It's
sports is the greatest and the worst.
Oh, it's the greatest and the worst. And then, driving back 9 hours from State College, listening to the Mets lose out on a playoff spot was also really fun.
And the Giants star wide receiver.
Finally win a game, and he's out for the year. Sports are fun. Sports are fun. I'm glad I do this to myself.
Well, I'm a Vikings fan, so that didn't go much better. Politics is fun too, right? It's not tiring at all.
Not at all. No, nothing tiring there.
Our guest this week, she has been all over the country. If you follow her on social media, she has been to I think she was in California last week.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the speaker circuit is ramping up for her. But we're talking about Democratic Party Chair Anderson Clayton here in North Carolina. Just a ball of energy as always.
As always. But yes, it is. It has been where in the world is Anderson Clayton recently.
So she's on this week to talk about really, we end up talking a lot about the state of the Democratic Party, which I think is fascinating because it's in an interesting place. Obviously, after losing big in 2024 at the national level, doing pretty good in North Carolina. There's a lot of questions, though, about sort of the state of the party. That's fair, right?
Rightfully so, yeah. I mean, and you're right, the dichotomy between the terrible year that they had nationally, and then, I remember a couple hours into election night looking at the statewide races and going, that's not that bad. But, obviously it gets overshadowed by the bigger, more high-profile things.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the Senate race, young voters. There is a sense of fatigue, joking about being tired of the sports now that the weekend. But it is an interesting dynamic, I think, about the fatigue that is out there, about people paying attention to all this and trying to rile up voters and party folks, too, for them.
Yeah, I mean, in this political climate, it is very easy to feel inclined to just tune out and not pay attention, but that's where you get in trouble.
Yeah, exactly. So she's been party chair since 2023. She is 27 now. There's such a big talk for so long about this. She's the youngest 25-year-old chair. I think she's still the youngest party chair. But she is from Roxborough, an App State native, graduate as well. And she worked for Elizabeth Warren over the years and Kamala Harris. And as we mentioned, she is the chair of the Democratic Party. Here is Anderson Clayton. Anderson Clayton, it's good to see you.
It's good to see you too, Tim Boehm.
I watched your social media channels. You've been all over the place, like literally all over the place across the country. What has that been like? What have you learned about yourself, the party, North Carolina?
I can sleep really well on a plane.
Lucky you.
Yeah. I think I've learned that there is a lot of energy and excitement across the country for North Carolina right now, especially that we've got the most competitive Senate race in the country. And I also think that just across North Carolina, the energy is also there on the ground. And so I've been really heartened. I was just in Watauga County this last weekend for the 1-year anniversary of Hurricane Helene passing through and making sure that we were engaging in the best way possible. The governor's office has got Renew NC up and running right now. And so Boone is one of the 3 places in Western North Carolina that actually have a physical office location. And so really important for us to be engaging with people as much as possible out there in the 35 counties that it impacts to be able to get information out about how they can get help from the state government right now while the federal government still lags behind.
When you've been traveling the country, what have you learned about the party? Because obviously you've been with a lot of people that are in the party, but California is different than North Carolina and whatnot. What stood out to you?
Honestly,
the party's in flux, right?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people are still really angry. They want to see a plan. A lot of people don't have a lot of hope right now in what's happening. And you know what's funny? Honestly, I went out to California this last week and I looked at them and I said, look, let me tell y'all something. Y'all are worried about what's happening right now at the federal level, and I get it. It's bad out there, trust me. But the South has been going through Project 2025 for the last 25 years, the 25 years before that, and the 25 years before that. And so in my opinion, the rest of the nation is finally getting to see and to feel what we have been going through for so long, which is Republican oppression, in my opinion, in this state, and the defunding of public education, the deprioritizing of our government and what it's supposed to do for people across North Carolina. And I'm like, look, we've been surviving through it. So when people look at me and they say, are we going to make it to 2026 or 2028, Anderson, under this administration? I'm like, yes. And we choose and we decide how we're going to do that. And North Carolina can be the way out, I believe, for not just the next 2 terms, but for the next 4 terms in Congress, to make sure that we have a Democratic majority that can actually get shit done when we're in office again.
All right, let's go to the Senate race. I mean, we'll talk about the party again a little bit later, but how much relief maybe did you feel when Roy Cooper got in the race this summer? Is that fair?
I felt a lot of relief because I was finally going to stop getting asked, when is Governor Cooper going to enter the race everywhere that I went? We did a 55 county rural tour this summer, and a little part of it's still ongoing. I'm going out to Burke County tonight, and then Stokes County tomorrow too. So we are going to make sure that we're hitting everywhere. But the cool thing that I got to hear was that everybody, regardless of what county I was in, was really excited. They knew who he was. They were like, we are geared up, ready to go. We want to be out there campaigning for him. We want to wear the T-shirts already. I've got people requesting yard signs, and I'm like, oh my God, give me a break.
Not yard signs. For those that don't know, that is a very controversial thing in the political world.
No, it is. But also just like right now, I was like, it's not even 2025 yet. I said, let me give you a municipal yard sign before I give you a Senate yard sign. How about it? But they're excited.
Wow. I mean, it changes the race completely for y'all, right? I mean, that means no disrespect to Wiley Nickel or whoever else is going to run, but it totally changes the dynamic of the race, right?
I mean, having a 2-term governor, 2-term attorney general, and someone that had a 60% approval rating in rural North Carolina when he left office, the most popular governor in 2024, a person that won with Donald Trump right on the ballot twice in a state that he has also won 3 times in that sense, I think is really important. And it matters to people across the country to believe that North Carolina is winnable, because they still keep calling us the great white whale out there is also what I have realized. And one of the things that I keep telling people is that we are the least invested in whale, which is why it is harder to catch us, honestly. And I think that the national investment this year is going to be something that we're going to see more and more of, which I'm excited for.
I'm assuming you're alluding to the fact that everybody thinks North Carolina is winnable, but it's just like Charlie Brown in the football a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, no, they genuinely think they're like it's the behemoth that we cannot capture, the sort of the light in the distance, if I'm quoting The Great Gatsby in some ways maybe, but it's the state that they just can't get. And what I tried to explain to folks is that Wisconsin was the most invested in battleground state last year. It has 6 million people in the state. North Carolina has 11 million people almost in this state, right? And we were the least invested in battleground state. And yet we came behind Wisconsin. We were the second state in the country to swing the least to the right. And I think that to me is saying, the more investment that you make in North Carolina, the more that you can see movement in it. And we've not had that in the 2020 cycle or in the 2022 cycle. I think that every time the nation has not met North Carolina where it needs to be. And this year, I think we're about to see that change drastically.
I was going to ask you, do you have any indication that that's going to be different this time?
Yeah, you haven't heard that apparently, according to Politico, we're going to be the King Kong of Senate races this year. Come on, shout out Alex. I do think that he was like, $1 billion Senate race. And I was like, yeah, that's going to make my fundraising real easy. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for saying that right now. What I will say, your local state party could still use your dollars, ncdp.com, everybody.
That does make it hard for other races in some ways, right? Because everyone wants to donate to that race. And you got a lot of other, including a state Supreme Court race next year. And...
I do. Where the party would put a lot of priority in our Supreme Court races. When I got in this job in 2023 and we looked at where are you going to win back levers of power in the state, the Supreme Court was definitely it. And so we were at a 5-2 minority then, and the next 2 election cycles that I had were Democratic holds. And so 28 is my Goliath year in every case for that. But we've got Anita Earls, who has been a champion of justice, in my opinion, on our Supreme Court. Somebody that, when I've been out there Eastern North Carolina this last summer, and I've been talking about the judicial races, and when I get to Anita Earls, everybody already knows her name, and they say, no, you need to know the story of Anita Earls here in Eastern North Carolina. You need to understand that she's somebody who's come out and knocked doors of people here, and she would say, hey, my name's Anita. And I'm here to help you get your rights back because you didn't know that you lost them. And it's the thing of how many people I think have met her throughout her work and her defending their rights in a court of law. And it's an amazing story that I'm excited that the party's going to get to tell more and more throughout 2026 of who she's helped.
Someone asked me, I was on a panel once, they asked me that what the last 20 years of politics, what will be remembered by. And I tell people the most underrated story I think that will happen is how Republicans really focused on the courts early, and it changed everything in this state. I still think it's one of the most underrated political stories, for better or worse, in the state in the last decade or more, right?
Yeah, when people look at me and they go, Anderson, that's the other thing people ask me. They say, oh my God, are the Republicans going to gerrymander North Carolina as badly as they did Texas or somewhere like that? And I was like, they already did. North Carolina was the petri dish for it. What you're seeing in Texas and everywhere else is a fault of ours in that sense. Until I learned this week, right, that the U.S. Supreme Court is thinking about eradicating my VRA, and I've got good old Phil Berger up there saying, hey, Donald, I'm a little worried about my primary. Would you help me out here with an endorsement? And
he's denied that, by the way.
And well, and wants to trade a congressional seat for an endorsement. I would deny that too if I were him, but the rumor's out there, baby.
So you agree, though, that the courts is one of the most underrated, probably impactful things that's happened?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think about it, and it's funny. The courts have sort of been when I think about my political career and how it has happened, the courts have played such an integral part of it without me even realizing it in so many ways. So 2016, when I got into college at Appalachian and that election happens, the reason why we got to keep that voting site on campus was because we had Democratic courts that sided with a county party that sued the State Board of Elections in order to keep their voting site on campus that year. And that, to me, when you realize how our courts have been, in my opinion, Republican dominated over the last 4 election cycles. And that happened right after 2010 when Republicans took control of the General Assembly. They actually put a judicial director in their House. And when I came in 2023, our body or our executive board decided that these were not going to be races anymore that we could not put a hand on and make sure there was somebody focused on them. And when you even look at the national level too for Democrats, there's not a national organization that focuses on court races. You've got the DGA for governors, you've got the DLC for the DLCC for legislative, the DSCC for senatorial. You even have race or organizations like that for auditor and lieutenant governor and everything else too, but you don't see them for down ballot court races, and those are the races that are determining congressional maps right now. Whether or not
super short-sighted in a lot of ways.
It was. I mean, I think anybody would tell you our party has been that way for quite some time, and that's why the thing that I talk the most about is a long game, I think, and it has also been sometimes disheartening for donors.
I was gonna say, that's hard for you, right?
It is because they're looking at
now.
me and they want change now, and I have had to remind a lot of people that, it's not your future that we're fighting for anymore. It's people like mine and everyone else's that are my age that are coming up. And you have to be willing to sacrifice like people before you did. And that means fighting like hell to make sure that there is one to exist. And I told a crowd full of folks that last night or Saturday night in Watauga County. I was looking at a crowd full of older folks, I mean, and I think that the belief, I have so many people that look at me when I talk to them about taking back the Supreme Court in 28, and they just go, are we going to make it to that, Anderson? And I'm like, yes, I can taste it, actually. But I need y'all to stay with me on it, because if you don't, then no, we're not. If I have people that lack the faith or the willpower or the belief that it's possible. And so I feel like a lot of what I'm doing is sitting out there telling people, actually, we've been doing it for a long time. I need you to do it for just a little bit longer, because otherwise we're looking at 20 years of Republican control of North Carolina.
Well, that's fatigue sets in, right, for people. 28 is really important. I mean, 26 is obviously too. 26 is important for federal races because you haven't won since 08. And although this is the best dynamic
thank you,
you've
Tim
had
William.
it's the best dynamic, though, in so many ways for Democrats since 2008, right?
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, 2024 was the first time we won a Supreme Court seat since 2018. And I think that should prove to people, yes, you can win a statewide election. Allison Riggs, and I tell people this all the time, had never run statewide before, won by 734 votes out of 5.5 million casts in a state that Donald Trump carried by 3 points. That's a big deal when you look at what we can do in North Carolina when we put our energy and our time and our focus into something. And Republicans know that just as well, in my opinion. But it is something where Democrats have got to put a lot of energy into 2026 because it's a whole year for us again. 24 was a whole year for us, whether or not we wanted to realize it. And yes, we're going to take a Senate seat when we do that, but the real power gains that we're going to be able to make are in 2028. North Carolina will have 22 statewide races that year. It'll be the most that any state has in the entire country. I mean, it's going to be the like I said, the Goliath year that I think we're all sort of preparing for. And I don't say that lightly as somebody who started out being like, and still is, right? We put a big priority on municipal races this year in every way. But I think about it now in the context of national power and how does our state actually wield that for not just 28, but 2030 and 2032. And our party has got to look at the fact that we don't want to just oscillate from having majorities in Congress. We actually want to keep majorities and hold them, because I don't want to have to negotiate, to be honest, with extreme Republicans when we get control of Congress again. I think I'd rather Democrats be able to go up there and pass a healthcare system that can actually work for people across America and that can do the things that we need to do, can raise the federal minimum wage, which is still at $7.25 like North Carolina's is. I mean, we have a lot of opportunity.
It changes the narrative winning next year, too, if Cooper wins for Democrats, I think, right? The momentum and just the feelings are important, right? I mean, money is super important.
No, I mean, I think North Carolina wins a Senate race next year, and Republicans across this state are going to all of a sudden go, oh, my God, we are in real trouble. I think they did that a little bit in 24, but then they won the federal level, and they were like, oh, okay, North Carolina's still North Carolinaing a little bit. And I'm like, well, yeah. It's going to change in 28, in my opinion, and in 26. But
North Carolina.
Yeah.
Republicans constantly tout the voter registration numbers, that they're going to overtake Democrats at some point. Obviously, there's the dynamics of them going, so many people going to unaffiliated. What do you think about that? Does it concern you?
When you have about 88 counties in North Carolina that have been gerrymandered out of having a competitive election ever in their life, because Republicans have gerrymandered the state to where they can win elections and know where there's going to be, where they're going to win for Republicans and where Democrats are also going to have their own gains, right? It doesn't create, I think, a ability to have registration numbers that are reflective of the population, because in North Carolina, we're a special state. You have a semi-closed primary where unaffiliateds can register as an unaffiliated and then be able to go in and vote in either primary. And so a lot of what my rural Democrats do, right, is that in those 88 counties that I talk about are registered unaffiliated, and they go in and they pull a Republican ballot, and then they vote for the lesser of two evils in a Republican primary, because Democrats don't have primaries often in those areas. And it really is. It's hard to get people to run in races that are not going to be competitive, let alone creating competition in those amongst the before part instead of the actual competition in the election that you need. And so I think that when we get free and fair maps in North Carolina again, you're going to start to see a lot of registration shift, to be honest with you. But I think the third that we're seeing right now across the state doesn't worry me. It just means that we expand who we talk to, and we make sure that we're targeting unaffiliateds and not targeting them in the way of like, how do they lean which way or the other, because it really doesn't tell you the truth in rural North Carolina right now about how somebody's registered. And a lot of that just means that we don't need to target voters as much, which I think is something that's sort of a hot take in our party right now. But I think,
what do you mean?
I mean, like, I'm somebody that in a lot of the areas that we're in, I think we have to knock every door. And that means that you're not going in and picking out Republicans or Democrats, which means you're also going to get some hostile doors probably that you're going to talk to at some point.
So getting back away from the targeting that the apps provide.
Yeah, and just like, I mean, especially so we're going to do with the Renew NC program, there's so many people across Western North Carolina that don't know that, for an example, that program will help you take your, like if you had a tractor or a model home, right, and take your trailer and it will actually like lift it and it will give you a new one, essentially. Like the program, if you apply for it and you qualify for aid, but so many people don't know the program exists. So in the 35 counties that were affected by Hurricane Helene, like our party is now going to be able to go in and do canvases basically. But I was like, we don't need to target those voters because it doesn't matter. We don't just want to target Democratic voters with help from the state government about ways that Hurricane Helene victims can get support right now. We want to do it everywhere. And that to me is like, how do we get more creative about when we target maybe? And like in the 3 weeks before an election, sure, I do want my Democrats to get out there, but I think that our party can be a lot more aggressive about how do we do non-targeting in other areas of the state.
So I'm glad you talked about the rural stuff, because something is fascinating to me, because you still live in rural North Carolina.
Thank you, Tim
Still
William.
live in rural North Carolina.
Yes. We've not moved to Raleigh. We touch grass every day. Every day I go home.
I was just out in the mountains. In fact, the day that this episode is going to drop, there's a new Front Porch Politics coming out, and I do a long story with Jamie Ager, who is running in the 11th District, which is Chuck Edwards. It's Republican leaning. But anyways, he's not your typical politician, even though it runs in his family. He's a farmer. But when I asked him about the Democratic Party, he expressed some frustration for a long time about too much focus on urban areas, and urban areas almost telling rural America what they should and shouldn't do, and sort of this holier than thou thing. Does he have a point?
I mean, yeah, I think that a lot of people, even folks in urban areas, would call a Democratic Party that they feel like that's been elitist for a while. And that is because of the fact that we need to chase real efforts for campaign finance reform. Like, we need to get big money out of politics, because I think that that is what has impacted so much. And we can't do that right until Democrats get majorities in Congress. But I think saying it out loud, that it is things that we want to get to. You know, people look at me and they're like, how are we okay with the gerrymandering that's going on in places like California, like Prop 50 and stuff like that right now as a party, when we've always been the one person, one vote party? And I'm like, because we can't, like, Republicans are not playing fair, and we don't need to either right now in that sense. But we need to give voters an opportunity to say, this is when it can end. And we are going to go mano a mano for a minute, because we need to be able to save the democracy that we have in place right now. And we know what they're doing and why they're doing it. But the John Lewis Voting Rights Act is getting passed in 2030 when we have a congressional majority and trifectas across it. But they're going to have a way to see an end goal in sight, because I think that for a lot of people, they stopped believing in our party when that happened. And honestly, like, Democrats have just got to get back into rural areas. I feel like I've said that for the last 2 years since I've been in this job, but showing up matters. And I felt that with the way in which Allison Riggs' election was won. Like, those 734 votes were all of my rural counties getting out there and believing and talking about judicial elections. And I see them right now doing it across the ground too. And it may not have reached every single person in a rural area that I needed it to yet, but it's like, I don't think that my rural Democrats are out there questioning whether or not this party necessarily cares about them at a state level. I think nationally, we also have to show that too.
Well, it's a branding issue for the party as a whole, not about North Carolina or counties or whatever. I've always said for both parties that in this new era, they have to let people run how they need to run in certain places, right? But I mean, both parties fail in that in a lot of ways, right?
Well, I mean, I think
John Agger's got to run as a conservative Democrat farmer guy out in Western North Carolina, right? And a Republican's got to run as a little more moderate in a suburban area, for instance, right?
I mean,
for winning and losing.
I think that they need to run to represent their districts, and that would be the thing that I would tell anybody always, is that, what do the people on the ground there expect you to be? And if you've got a party label, then I'm going to be there to support you with vote builder access, a field team, and everything
else. But donors hate
that,
that, don't they? They want them all to vote the way that they think they should, no matter what the issue is.
I mean, I don't think that donors hate that. I think there are certain issues that we have values that are supposed to be aligned on as a party. At some point in time, a party does have to stand for something. It can't just be that the candidates are leading on everything, because we are an organized apparatus that is supposed to support you. And so, yes, we've got visions and values that we want to be aligned with. And if you want to vote a different way on something like that, that's fine. But there also has to be, I think, repercussions for people that do that in some ways too. And that's at least what I think right now.
But younger voters hate the whole identity politics thing, right?
They do, but that doesn't mean that, like, political parties aren't going to exist in the future or right now. I mean, I think that, and that's something we can discuss, right? I think that the future electorate, and maybe people should decide, because what I do see a lot of times right now is that people look to candidates to choose the messaging and the narrative, because candidates have the money to be able to get the messaging and the narrative out there. It's not that they wouldn't look to a party to be able to do it. And I think that sometimes candidates want the party to meet them instead of candidates meeting the party. And I'm like, but the party is supposed to be the base of people. Like, it is actually supposed to be the folks on the ground. The candidate's one person. And so I just think it's an interesting dynamic that you get into when you realize, like, how campaigns are funded and the way in which politics and a political system works.
Well, I'm pressure that candidates get to vote or be one way because of where the money comes from, right? I mean, especially these days. I don't mean from parties.
Yeah.
At all.
No, I mean, you're like special interest groups. I think that's true. I think what you have, though, and when you're going back to what you were talking about with Jamie Yeager and sort of the opportunity that he has, I think where Democrats have been bad recent, or like just in last terms, is that they try to take a national issue and make it local instead of what Republicans do, which is take a local issue and make it national. And to me, the local issue making it national is a much more effective strategy that we could learn a lot from, I think, to be honest.
Well, so although there has been stuff in North Carolina, but crime is one of those issues, right?
Yes.
We've talked about this before. Democrats always prefer to be right over winning than the past. I mean, I had Democrat after Democrat talks that, and there's been those stats thrown out that violent crime is down or whatnot. But this is it feels like this crime issue is hitting home with people. especially with what happened in Charlotte, what just happened in Southport this last weekend. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's worried about their communities and the safety of them right now. I don't necessarily know that the party that allowed for January 6th to happen, though, is the party that's leading on public safety. Just my opinion.
You think you think how do Democrats? So let me put it this way: Democrats are going to go after Roy Cooper hard. Obviously,
They already have. They've got an ad up now.
Exactly. So
Where-
what's the best way to counter that? Is that what you just said there? You think?
I mean, yes, I think that a lot of people do need to remember that Republicans are the party that endorsed, and Donald Trump was out there waving on my January 6th as they took on the Capitol that day, which I think is a reminder of like, actually, no, they do not care about public safety. I think federal cuts to or our police organizations, I think when you're looking at the fact that the Fraternal Order of the Police last year had said that their number one statistic was that there had been more police officers that had died in the line of duty in that year than any year in North Carolina state history. And I'm like, yeah, and Republicans want to go and put more guns into the streets right now with passing bills like Senate Bill 50. I mean, I don't think that Republicans can talk about a plan for public safety until they present one in a state legislature that doesn't involve maybe enforcing or allowing for the electric chair to come back as a way of the death penalty. Do I believe that is public safety? No. Do I believe it needs to be taken seriously? Yes. And I think that somebody who the North Carolinians and the public that has elected him as Attorney General, which is your top law enforcement officer in the state, twice for 8 years, and then continued to reelect him again as governor for 8 years, because that is also your second top law enforcement officer in the state, and that Democrats have consistently had that reputation with North Carolinians because they trust top law enforcement officers and Democrats in that capacity to keep them safe, because they know that they take seriously when communities don't feel that way. And obviously we are having issues in places like Charlotte right now and in Southport. But that should tell you that it's not just in one place, it's in urban and in rural communities that we're seeing it. It is the access to weapons right now that we're seeing a Republican state legislature put into the hands of more and more people. It is the fact that they are also not taking seriously community safety, in my opinion, at a state level. And they're going to try to pass whatever bullshit bill that they can to make people feel like they are and that they're working on it. But I don't think that we've actually seen that in a bipartisan capacity in our state legislature.
Well, I think that's the hard part for a voter or citizen to take this most recent bill, because I think there's a lot of stuff in that bill that Democrats would totally have gone along with.
And they did.
But then you throw the death penalty thing in. But then Republicans are all over today on Twitter saying about how, day 6 of Josh Stein not signing the bill that would do this.
And I'm sure they're going to use their bully pulpits to spread right-wing propaganda in every capacity that they can. I'm not disillusioned about what Republicans in Raleigh are going to do. I think it's about what Democrats on the ground are actually able to message on and people are able to feel. And that means that we need real changes at a city council level, right? And honestly, at a county level too, to be able to make that happen. But those elected officials can only do so much without a state legislature giving them the ability to do it. Like, I don't see how... And I do, because people honestly don't necessarily understand how lines of that work, right? But I do think that our state legislature has a big responsibility to help with public safety and that they're not upholding their responsibilities.
Yeah,
right
that's
now.
what I was just saying. I don't envy either side having to do things like that, because it is a bumper sticker thing that shows, Democrats voted against that bill, but then there's one amendment that came in after. And I'm not saying better for worse on any part of that bill. I just think that's part of the challenge. And us as communicators, as journalists, making sure that people know that too. But people got to pay attention to know that. So.
That's what I'm about to say too. I was like, how many people are going to know what that bill actually did or does, or the ones that come out of Raleigh? Like the reality of it is Republicans are going to paint it however they want to. It is how much reach do they have in the state of North Carolina. And that's the unfortunate reality that we're in right now, right? It's like, it doesn't actually matter what the truth of that is. It doesn't matter if there was an amendment that got put in there at the last minute that truly did heinous things to people right now in our judicial system. But I think it is about the fact that you have Republicans that can do whatever they want to, and they go out there and they lie about it regardless of what they do.
Do you think the economy is the number one thing again next year?
I definitely think the economy is going to be a number one issue. I also think what's happening right now, though, I think people's hope and faith in politics is also going to be on a ballot box next year, and the ability for people to feel like they want to keep doing this. I think that folks are tired, and I think they're fed up, and they need hope, and they need optimism, and they need something to believe in. And that's what I want to be able to give people going around the state, is that we have that in North Carolina, and we've got a plan to be able to reach it. But it's not going to be easy, and I think that that's the number one message that I need folks to hear right now is that it is going to get worse before it gets better. If Republicans are able to continue gerrymandering North Carolina, they'll take us to 12-2. Hell, they may take us to 13-1 if they could figure out a way to do it. And I think that that's going to really be demoralizing for a lot of my Democrats across the state that are like, what are we doing right now? And I'm like, we're going to take back this Supreme Court. Their victories are going to be short-lived and ours are going to be long-term. And we're focused on that right now across the state.
Yeah, the redistricting thing's a game of chicken right now in a lot of ways. Because you were saying, like in California, they feel like they got to go man to man or mano to mano or whatever, woman to woman, you know, to do that. But then you're trying to fight against it here in North Carolina, what Phil Berger wants to do. It's a big game of chicken, right?
Well, I mean, the thing is, I've accepted the realities regardless of what's going to happen. I'm sort of like, my plan is that's the thing. I'm like, the plan of North Carolina is going to be the plan to either we're going to have to stick out that 2-year juncture that we have where we lose 2 people and we still in 28 are able to flip it and gain it back. But I'm not blinded by the fact Republicans also have the same plan, right? They have the ability, they want to keep the Supreme Court. And so they're going to throw gobs and gobs of money at it in 26, which is why I'm telling people right now, the state Supreme Court definitely does need your money, your time, your talent, your energy in North Carolina. But I also think it's going to be a really interesting year for what's going to happen, I think.
If they take some folks away for District 1, though, that like if they take it from 13, that makes it a little more competitive for you, right?
I mean, that's the thing. I don't know. You might get a dummy mander. You know, there's a reality in which they do something. And I think that, to be honest, the Republicans are smart enough to know that as well. Like, I don't think that I've got I'm trying to think of the right word to say. Idiots.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is if
I don't have idiots in Raleigh. I don't think on the Republican side of things. Otherwise, I think they would have lost elections a long time ago. But you know,
I mean, I don't know how many seats they're trying to or votes people they're trying to get back. But if it makes the other one a little more competitive, it's a really good year for you. You could do even better potentially.
I think we're gonna have a good year because we're having good candidates. I think you've got a good year when you have good people running for office that are from the areas or that are at least embedded in the communities that they care about and that people there know them for who they are. And I think that you're going to see a lot of that pop up. And you already do for Congress this year. We're going to have congressional primaries for the first time in like 8 years in North Carolina in some of these districts. I mean, people, the one race I left, we got so much good credit last year, which I appreciate for running people in almost every state legislative seat. But my biggest disappointment in myself last cycle was leaving 2 congressional races uncontested. I had people that were going to go the day of filing, and I swear to God, they called me that day and they said, Anderson, I just can't do it. And I was sitting there at the fairgrounds trying to get people like Eileen to come in from Wake County and go file for this seat for me. And I looked at her, I was like, you just got to be a name on the ballot. I'll find somebody else from the district eventually, but please just go do this. And they couldn't get across Wake County in time because it was like 30 minutes left. And I was kicking myself, right, for those 2 seats. And this year I was like, we have somebody running in every congressional seat already, and filing is months away. And I was like, oh my God. And then state legislative seats are going to be the same way. And to the point where the party can now be in the place where we're like, oh, we can go start looking at county commissioner seats. We can look at sheriff races. Like this is go time. And it's because all of our county parties, and so shout out to the people on the ground and my precinct chairs and everybody, have taken so much energy to say we're going to make sure we've got somebody in these seats because we know what it did last election cycle. And that to me is a big win on the other side of it. My biggest failure, my biggest win at the same time.
Obviously, turnout's still the most important thing. You are still the young voter. We talked about people being fatigued and disillusioned. How do you feel about that in the 18 to 24 to 18 to 30 age group?
They need to meet the people that they're going to vote for, and they need to meet them whether that be online or whether that be in person. But it's one of the reasons why, someone said to me recently, they were like, a 30-point shift in young people is not a field margin, Anderson. It's a narrative shift. And I'm like, yeah, Republicans have done a really good job, I think, of being able to control methods of media and the ways in which people are actually being reached by them. And so for me, it's building up that ecosystem and apparatus in a state. I don't really know how to figure that out for a nation yet, to be honest. I'm gonna let my national party be able to tell you that one. But at least in North Carolina, I think you're going to start to see a lot more investment in local media for us, and also of us trying to be more on content creation. And so I've done like only 3 videos so far, I think, but they're on YouTube. We're doing a little something, trying to educate some folks. And
it's good to see other people trying to figure out this media navigation.
Well, I was saying, I think Tim Boyum, you do a good job at it. But
if you want to keep up with what's happening in North Carolina politics and hear more conversations with people shaping our state and beyond, check out the Tying It Together YouTube channel in the description. Hit subscribe and let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth political coverage, elections, and issues that matter to you.